Imagine driving down a long, empty road, the only sound being the hum of your truck. The night is quiet, but there's something eerie about it, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being watched. Then, just when you think you're alone, something happens. Something that can't be explained. Stay tuned as I share 3 true, disturbing trucker horror stories that will make you think twice before driving through the night. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're focusing on the world of trucking. These 3 stories are from real truckers who encountered things on the road that they couldn't explain. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for some truly chilling tales from the open road. Story 1. The Phantom Hitchhiker by Derek. My name is Derek, and I've been driving trucks for over 15 years. I've traveled every highway and back road, from the bustling interstates to the isolated stretches of desolate land. I've seen strange things on the road, but there's one incident that still haunts me to this day. It was about 2 a.m. when I found myself driving through the vast, empty stretches of highway. The only thing visible in my headlights was the long, winding road ahead, and the only sound was the hum of the engine. The night had been quiet, and I had been driving for hours, feeling the weariness settle in. I was debating whether to pull over at the next rest stop, but the signs were too far ahead, and I didn't want to waste time. As I continued on, I suddenly saw something up ahead. At first, it appeared to be a shadow, but as I got closer, I could make out a figure standing just off the road, almost blending into the darkness. A woman. I felt a twinge of unease, but I didn't think much of it. There's a lot of wildlife on these roads, and sometimes you see strange shapes in the night. But as I drew nearer, the woman became clearer. She was wearing a white dress, long and flowing, but it was the way she stood there that felt off. No car was parked nearby, no bags or belongings around her, just a solitary figure in the middle of nowhere. I slowed my truck down as I passed, considering whether I should stop and offer her a ride. It's something I've done before, helping out stranded travelers. But as I got closer, I realized something was wrong. Her face, it didn't look quite right. There was no light reflecting off her face, not the way it should have with the moonlight. It was almost like her features were in shadow, even though the rest of her body was illuminated by the headlights. Something about her seemed unnatural. I couldn't explain it, but I suddenly felt this overwhelming urge to just keep driving. It wasn't like any hitchhiker I had ever seen, and the feeling in my gut told me to get away fast. As I reached the point where I was almost past her, I rolled down my window. "Hey, do you need a ride?" I called out. At first, there was no answer. I thought maybe she didn't hear me, so I called out again. But this time, it wasn't her voice that responded. It was a soft whisper that seemed to come from nowhere, like the wind carrying a message I couldn't understand. I glanced over again, and that's when I saw it. Her eyes. They weren't just dark, they were empty. There were no pupils, no irises, just black, endless voids. I don't know why, but at that moment I panicked. Before I could react, she started walking toward my truck. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and completely silent. I don't know how she was able to walk without making a sound on the gravel, but she didn't. It was as if she was gliding toward me. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I didn't think twice. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, speeding away from her without looking back. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, but I didn't stop. I drove for miles, not daring to look in my rearview mirror. When I finally pulled into a gas station and calmed myself down, I looked back at the stretch of road I had just driven through. There was no sign of her, no woman in the white dress, no hitchhiker, just an empty highway stretching into the night. I've passed that same stretch of road many times since that night, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched every time I do. I still don't know who or what that woman was, but I know one thing for sure. There was something wrong with that encounter, something I can't explain, and I'll never forget those black, empty eyes staring at me in the darkness. Story 2, The Truck That Follows You by Tommy. My name is Tommy, and I've been a trucker for about 10 years now. I've driven through every state, from coast to coast, and during that time, I've had my fair share of strange experiences on the road. But nothing compares to the night I was followed by another truck that I just couldn't shake off. It was a foggy night in Idaho, around 3 a.m. I had just finished a long haul and was starting my journey back home. The weather was miserable, with thick fog rolling in and limiting visibility to just a few feet ahead. I was tired but focused, trying to stay alert and avoid any mishaps on the slick, wet highway. I had been driving for nearly 6 hours straight when I noticed something strange. There was another truck behind me, its headlights dim, but they were unmistakable. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just another trucker heading to the same destination or taking the same route. But as the minutes dragged on, I started to notice something odd. No matter how fast or slow I drove, the truck remained just a few feet behind me. I'd speed up, change lanes, pull over, and let it pass. But every time I glanced back, the same truck was right there. It didn't matter if I turned off the highway or pulled into a rest area. It just kept following. The other truck never pulled ahead or seemed to get any closer, but it was like a dark shadow that just wouldn't leave. I couldn't see much of the truck from my rearview mirror, other than the dim glow of its headlights and its massive plain metal rig. There were no markings, no logos, just a dark, silent truck that seemed almost invisible in the fog. I couldn't make out the driver either, which was even more unsettling. It was as though the truck was driving itself, with no visible person inside. I started to get nervous. I had no idea who was behind the wheel or what their intentions were. I considered pulling over again, but something stopped me. It was as if some invisible force was pushing me to keep moving forward, away from that truck. And no matter how many times I checked my mirrors, it was always there. Following, waiting, never making a sound, just keeping pace. The hours ticked by, and I became more and more exhausted. I was afraid to stop, afraid that whatever this truck was might catch up or, worse, pull alongside me. I had no idea what I would do if it ever did. I couldn't take my eyes off the road, and the fatigue started to blur my vision. The fog was getting thicker too, almost like a tangible thing swirling around my rig, making it difficult to focus. Suddenly, the truck just disappeared. One moment, it was there, tailing me, and the next, it was gone. I slammed on the brakes, thinking maybe I'd just lost it for a moment, but when I looked around, there was no sign of it. The highway was empty, no headlights, no strange truck, just me and the eerie fog. I pulled over to catch my breath, but I couldn't help wondering where that truck had gone and who had been driving it. I've driven that same stretch of road several times since, but I still feel that unsettling presence. I look in my mirrors, and for a split second, I think I see it. Just a shadow in the fog, following at a distance. But when I stop, it vanishes again. Whatever that truck was, it's out there, always watching, always waiting. And I know that I'll never be able to shake off that cold, hollow feeling in my chest whenever I drive through that stretch of road again. Story 3, The Lost Truck by Jason. My name is Jason, and I've been a trucker for most of my adult life. I've driven through just about every state, crossed every highway, and seen more than my fair share of strange things on the road. But nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered one night in Kansas. It was about 3:30 a.m., and I had been on the road for what felt like forever. I was driving alone from Chicago to Denver, the roads empty and the only sound being the hum of my truck's engine. The fog had rolled in thick, swallowing the road in front of me. I could barely make out the outline of the truck in front of me, and the headlights seemed to cut through the fog like knives. I had been driving for hours, and the exhaustion was starting to take its toll. I knew I needed a break, so when I saw a rest area up ahead, I decided to pull off. It was a small stop, just a parking lot and a few picnic tables, surrounded by nothing but empty fields. As I pulled in, I noticed something strange. There was a truck parked at the far end of the lot. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was a big rig, just like mine, but it was odd because it was the only vehicle there. The parking lot was otherwise empty. But what really struck me as odd was the truck itself. It looked just like mine, same make, same model, same type of trailer. It was almost too similar, like looking at a mirror image. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to take a look. I shut off my engine and got out of my truck, walking toward the other rig. As I got closer, I realized the truck wasn't just parked, it looked abandoned. The lights were off, The engine was cold and there was no sign of anyone inside. I checked the door, but it was locked. I walked around the truck, peering through the windows, but I saw nothing. The interior was spotless, just like it hadn't been used in a while. I felt a chill run through me. It was Eerie standing there alone in the fog, staring at a truck that looked like it had been left in a hurry. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the dashboard, just below the windshield, there was a piece of paper. It was folded neatly, and I couldn't help but feel compelled to take a look. I walked over, opened the door slightly, and reached in to grab the note. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The note was short and simple, written in sloppy, hurried handwriting. "Get out while you still can." I stood there holding the note in disbelief. The words seemed to echo in my mind as I stared at them. Who had written this? Why was it left in this truck? And why was it directed at me? My heart began to race, and the weight of the note's warning started to sink in. I wasn't alone. Something was wrong. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out from behind the truck or from the shadows, but there was no one. The lot was still and silent, and the fog was so thick I could barely see a few feet in front of me. My nerves were on edge, and I suddenly felt the overwhelming need to leave. I quickly shoved the note in my pocket, backed away from the truck, and climbed back into my rig. My hands were shaking as I started the engine, and I didn't look back as I pulled out of the rest area and back onto the highway. I drove for what felt like hours, trying to shake off the feeling that I was being watched. To this day, I don't know who owned that truck or why it was parked there. I never saw another soul, and I never found any trace of that rig on the road again. But the words on that note still haunt me, and I've never been able to shake the feeling that something or someone was warning me. Every time I pass through Kansas now, I'm extra cautious, always looking for that truck in the fog, always wondering if I'll ever come across it again. And if I do, what will happen next? Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. Which of these stories gave you a chilling experience? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are real.